Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Game Esoterica and our continuing mini-series, Scale and Deliver, where I take a look at 5 of my favorite Taito superscalar games of all time, and today we have Super Chase. And of the 5 games on this series, this one may very well be my favorite that's not called Night Striker. I absolutely love this game. I play it probably every 6 months. It takes like 12 minutes to see the ending of it, but it is a ton of fun while you are playing it. Before we get too far involved though, it'd be a huge favor, go down below, hit like and subscribe, and that notification bell definitely helps us out. And if you feel so inclined and want to support the channel, we got a Patreon link down below as well. But without any further ado, let's get right into Super Chase, and it's technically Criminal Termination Super Chase, but I'm never going to call it that again. If you haven't played any of the Chase HQ games, they're an absolute blast, but for my money, this is my favorite. It was released in '92, and it's running on a Motorola 68020 processor, and some of the boards share some components with the Taito Z board, which ran Night Striker that I've already shown you guys. I can't find definitive notes that this board has some of the same hardware on it, so it's possible, but I can't really say with any certainty, so we'll just ignore that as being a potential. But honestly, it is just an absolutely insane racing game where you're not actually trying to get to the finish line, you're trying to destroy the criminal you're approaching. How do you do that? You just ram their car until they explode. But this game is just pure madness from start to finish, and it is spectacular. We're driving through a pizza restaurant out of a wall, all while these 2D elements scale in real time. And I would say of the 5 games on this series, this is my favorite when it comes to the scaling technology. And yes, I just did beat the boss while also driving off a pier at the same time. That is how this game works. But you get all these fun little intercut sequences as well. This terrorist just blew up a building, and now we have to hunt him down. But of course, Nancy's got to come on the radio, tell us who we're looking for, and give us fully voice-acted dialogue along with it. And the voices sound great. It's 100% intelligible. You know what she's saying, and it makes perfect sense. And before this, sometime arcade voice samples just did not sound as good as they could. But here it sounds incredible. But again, just look at all of this sprite scaling. This is not just a fun technological showcase, it's an absolute blast of a game. And I love that you go from the first person driver's view to behind the vehicle as this helicopter is trying to shoot you down. There is so much to deal with in Super Chase. You have to stay on the road, you have to make sure you don't hit any trees, you have to jump an entire river, you have to avoid cars and tunnel walls, all while enemies are attacking you at certain spots. There is always something on screen to navigate and deal with, and because you are running on a timer, you need to get to the boss of that area before time runs out. And I don't know how we just jumped that chasm there. There was no ramp, but it just seemed to work. But again, it's a challenging game. That bridge is so narrow, and you're avoiding that helicopter throwing grenades at you at the same time. When you do it well, everything feels great. And I got to the boss with 1 second to spare. This is not an easy game. Of course, we're not putting in real quarters, but if you're in an arcade behind a cabinet, you're probably going to spend $10 to $15 to see the ending, depending on how much they're charging you. And you'll see there I got a little bit out of line, and I crashed my car directly into that pillar, and that is a killer. You get 3 turbos per life. Once you've used them up, you have no more turbos for the rest of the stage until you complete it. And you need those turbos to get that boss car off of the road. You'll see here that if you catch up to him, you can hit him without them. But if you drop back, it's going to take you 20-25 seconds to even get close to him again. And that is how you end up losing. So your turbo management in this game is absolutely paramount. But once you understand the courses, how they run, and where you should save those turbos for, everything feels incredible. And I love this is basically just Crockett and Tubbs there arresting somebody. But moving on, this game visits a lot of different cities and culminates in the final level being in Chicago, and I always do love that. But Nancy's little hair flip there, I love that an animator put that in just for fun. And these little bump screens where you get all of the details of everyone you're hunting for and the color of their car just go to build a little bit of story. Now there really isn't much story whatsoever in Super Chase. Ram the bad guys with your vehicle and you win, but it's at least fun to have that in between stages. But just like every other Taito game, this also has a spectacular soundtrack. Even something like Dino Rex we talked about previously on the channel that's an absolutely horrible game still has some redeeming music in spots. Taito never let you down when it came to the soundtrack. So go ahead and listen for like 45 seconds and I'll come back and talk more about the history of Chase HQ as a series, the game that we're talking about right now, Super Chase, and the rest of Taito Superscalers. But enjoy! That soundtrack is just amazing with that 80s style jazz. It definitely feels like something that would be torn straight out of a Lethal Weapon movie, and that's what Super Chase and the entire Chase HQ series always seem to emulate. It's like one part Miami Vice, one part Lethal Weapon, and one part every other generic 80s cop movie you have ever seen, and that's not a bad thing. But you'll see here we have that boss taken down again, but as we get further on into the game, eliminating that car is going to get harder and harder because the game's going to put more and more obstructions in your way. But one of my favorite things about the game in and of itself is it's constantly traversing the US. Now it is interesting that two cops travel the US, and they must be FBI agents because I don't think they'd have jurisdiction otherwise. But we get to see something new every single level. There's a new environment and there's a new kind of hook as to the gameplay, because you will see here later in this level what that's going to be. But I love that they basically set the roadblock up for the police and then we drive directly through it. I don't know why they roadblocked their own cars there. But now we're out in the desert, and it's just so much fun to get different scenery, and everything looks so great. And I love how the vehicles that you're trying to avoid, or in my instance, crashing directly into right there, scale with your screen. Those sprites get really big, and the scaling is good. There's of course a couple of staggers and steps here and there, but for the most part it really does feel like a nice, consistent linear scale as you go by them. It sells the illusion that when you get into a chasm like this with the rock walls around you, everything seems to move faster. That sense of speed as everything's blowing by just 100% sells itself, and I just bumped the wall there and shattered my windshield out, and I love that you can do that in the vehicle. It's one little touch that just gives the game more character. But then you just get hit in the face with a stick of dynamite and lose all of your speed. And you do need to shift in this game. It is not automatic shifting. You have a low gear and a high gear, and you do need to manage those. If you bump too many things, you have to go back into low gear to get those revs up before you can drop back down into high. Or you can just use a tractor trailer 100% jump over a train, and that is something I want to do in basically every game. I love it. Like I said earlier, every level has something a little bit different to do, and we drove our car directly into the back of an 18-wheeler and just continued on along the road. So now we have an 18-wheel big rig with 3 turbos ready to just absolutely decimate the other rig in front of us. And when you get higher up on the road, the scaling completely changes and it just feels different. And I love that the designers at Taito knew that they wanted to kind of mix the gameplay up as much as they could when their only hook was driving a car and smashing into other things. And it's just so much fun. We're driving through this oil refinery trying to take this car out in front of us. It is just a sense of sensation and speed that you don't get otherwise, and the fact that this was in '92, this is the same basic time frame where the Super Nintendo came out, and of course you wouldn't see anything like this on the Super Nintendo. Sure, it could do some scaling, but not to the level of something like Super Chase could, and you get that pat down there, seems like he's having a good time. But moving on to the final level, Chicago. I love any time anything is set in Chicago, even though the game starts completely out in the suburbs and it looks like a European village. But one more taste of the soundtrack, because damn it's good, and I will be right back.
This car's expensive.
That's just the type of thing that I would 100% buy on vinyl if I could find a copy. But I will say the last level is an exercise in frustration because you have to drive through some very narrow openings, and you're definitely going to flip your car at least once, if not like 8 times. But that's fair, it's the final level and they want those quarters off you. But I just can't get over how big of a spectacle Super Chase truly is. I remember when I first saw this game in arcades like 95 and 96, and even though we still had 3D at home, this blew my mind. I just love the sensation of speed, and that was the great thing about these 2D games in an era where 3D was just basically coming to arcades, is the sense of speed and the sense of just wonder that they could pull off in 2D rivaled if not exceeded some of the earliest 3D things we got in arcades. But we got Burt Reynolds there, at least it looks like Burt Reynolds to me, and I love the ending as well. It's like a classic cinematic cop movie where you get different vignettes of the car driving down the road. But Super Chase is a special game. I love it, and I absolutely am going to buy an arcade board as soon as I can find one for a decent price, because I love that it's basically just an amalgamation of the Taito Z board along with some enhanced Motorola processors on it. But leave me a comment down below and tell me, have you ever played this game? Do you plan on playing it after this? Or have you never played it and have no plans for it? Because there is another sequel, Chase HQ 2, that runs in full 3D that I did a video on almost 4 years ago, and this kind of makes me want to revisit it. But the entire Chase HQ franchise has a ton of entries and they are all fun. I just chose Super Chase because it's my favorite out of the entire franchise, and I love that we pull up in front of our police headquarters here. In what city? Who knows? They've been around the country, and we get this little cop celebration in the end. Everyone's so happy that we just ran 5 different criminals off the road, and they would have had spike strips just to try to stop them. But yeah, you see that music and voice by Team Zuntata. When you see that name, you know it's going to be good. But I'll be back next Wednesday with more scaling, and I'll have videos for the week as well. But Super Chase, 10 out of 10, definitely play it. Bye bye.